I always say to the young talent we work with, what are the skills that you want to develop, the experiences that you want to have, the knowledge that you want to gain? Focus on reflecting on those things, and then tell as many people as you can those three things. If we opened up and were honest more about what we wanted to experience or learn, I do think there's people around us in our world that will help us get there.
Welcome to the NarrowSpaces podcast, a limited engagement masterclass where leaders are invited to share their lessons learned and experiences in navigating those narrow spaces of work and life. We are creating a true masterclass in leadership. When the space between work and life is narrow, balance is impossible. I want to encourage you to be brave enough to lead in the narrow spaces. Today, I am thrilled to introduce Daniel Horgan, a true pioneer in the realm of talent development and community building. At just 18, Daniel took a remarkable step by leading the first youth-led America's Promise initiative in Pittsburgh under the guidance of retired General Colin Powell. His efforts earned him a seat in the National Board of Directors in recognition from President George W. Bush, setting the stage for a remarkable career. With over 25 years of experience across both the business and nonprofit sectors, Daniel is deeply committed to enhancing access to relationships and growth opportunities for individuals from all walks of life. As the founder of Collabl, he works at the vital intersection of talent development and community building, creating relationship-centered spaces that empower early career talent and people managers alike. His mission is to help them expand their networks, their skills, and experiences to achieve their own definition of success. Daniel has collaborated with some of the world's most recognized brands, including LinkedIn, Apple, Taco Bell, Sherm, and Starbucks, as well as schools, nonprofits, and government agencies, amplifying impact across various sectors. He serves on the board of directors for Taco Bell Foundation and has been involved with numerous other organizations, showcasing his dedication to community service. Recognized as one of Pittsburgh's 40 under 40 honorees, Daniel has facilitated hundreds of training sessions, keynoted conferences, and published insightful articles, including his works in Forbes.com. His first book, Tell Me I Can't and I Will, has inspired many, and his new release, We Got This, a pocket guide to thriving in our careers and life, is on shelves now. In our conversation today on NarrowSpaces, Daniel will share his invaluable insights on navigating the complexities of work and life. He'll discuss how to cultivate authentic relationships and leverage opportunities for personal and professional growth. Daniel's unique experiences and perspective will surely inspire us all to find our own pathways to success and fulfillment. Currently residing in Southern California, Daniel embodies the spirit of navigating narrow spaces, and I can't wait for you to hear his insights on how we can all thrive in our careers and lives. I love this. So Daniel, we're gonna jump right into this because you've had a really fun, exciting cross-country career. When I think about where you've gone in your career, you've gone west and you just keep going further and further and further. Now you're in California. So let's talk about this. You started your journey at a young age, leading a very significant initiative for America's Promise. At a young age, you absolutely navigated some of those narrow spaces. So can you share how some of those narrow spaces that you navigated or those challenges that you encountered during that time, can you share about how they shaped your approach to leadership today?
Absolutely, yeah. So it's interesting. I mean, I started a nonprofit when I was 18, and I think one of the narrowest spaces at the point of launch was the fact that nobody really would give me a lot of time of day. Right? A lot of people, when I would reach out to them and ask for support or try to build partnerships, try to raise resources to program what we were doing, a lot of people would just say things like, oh, you should go connect with somebody who has more experience, either in fundraising or in running an organization. And to be honest with you, I took that as a point of motivation. it's one of those things where you have a mindset choice where you can either let that be what defeats you or you can let that be what drives you. And I think for me, it drove me to say, this is the problem, that people don't see the intrinsic value that young people bring to the table, especially in spaces where decisions are being made that impact young people, which was the whole focus of what I was working on. And so it just went after it day after day. And until I found one person who invested in me and then gave me sort of the confidence to move into other spaces, open doors for me to build the case for what we were doing, then I was able to sort of move to a point where we were really taken seriously, and people started to see the value that we were bringing to the table. I'll give you a really quick funny story. As early on in the days, it was part of America's Promise, which was founded by retired General Colin Powell. Everyone in Pittsburgh at the time was very focused on trying to get retired General Colin Powell or his wife Alma Powell to Pittsburgh, and that was like super exciting for me, but it was not the driver. The driver was to do the work day in and day out and get people to understand how young people needed to be at the table and could add so much value. And it wasn't until we got Alma Powell to Pittsburgh for one of our events that all of a sudden the whole community, I felt like, started to rally around our work. And it was a good lesson learned, right? You have to tap into what motivates others in order to get them to see not only your vision, but the role that they can play in moving that work forward. And so those would just be like a few of the key lessons that I learned early on, things that didn't defeat me, but things that sort of propelled me forward.
Absolutely. Well, that's a really, really good tip. And it sounds like this tell me I can't idea and I will show you how I will. It's actually become part of your personal brand and how you transform leaders and how you work. So tell me a little bit about how those early experiences have begun to shape some of your more recent successes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I take a lot of the experiences that I've had and I think about, what do I wish I would have learned earlier on? What do I wish I would have been given in terms of tools or tactics, things of that nature? And so that's what we translate into our work at Collabl. So it's all about making sure that early career talent have the networks, the skills, the access to opportunities to pursue their definition of success. A lot of our work is first starting with them to define success for themselves, because that's such, I think, an important starting point. Otherwise, we chase after someone else's definition. And that is super easy to get caught up in. And so, a lot of the work that we're trying to do is just expose people to all sorts of different pathways that people have taken from the time they started to where they are today, and to understand that it's oftentimes 99.9% of the time not linear. And there's all sorts of ups and downs on the journey. There's twists and turns. I think second, it's really reminding people that they don't have to do this work alone. I think especially if you're someone who's a first-gen college student or college graduate, you have been in this space where you've been trying to prove yourself, you've been trying to get in the room, you've been trying to unlock opportunities, oftentimes feeling very isolated and on your own. And I want people to realize, like, you can stop that today and start opening up your network to people who are eager to learn about you, learn how they can support you, and again, not just their definition, but help them identify kind of where they are, where they want to go, and how they're going to get there. So those are some key things that I would say we've done so far.
Okay, so you're not going to be surprised that I want to go back to the word success, because I'm a word nerd. I love the definitions of things, and I love defining things that are very subjective and very concrete terms. One of the things that many people know about me that's no longer embarrassing is that I have a whiteboard in my bedroom that says, if you live your life according to your values, you get to live the life you deserve. But values can be very subjective. And so when I work with my clients and even the corporations that I serve, we go through a lot of pain to describe those values and define them and operationalize them. So when you started this idea of defining success, listen, Daniel, I want to get granular with you here. Your work in helping early career people define success is critical. So how do you guide early career talent and people managers in this important work of discovering and pursuing their unique definitions of success, especially in a world that, my goodness, it so often imposes conventional standards. Take me through this process.
Yeah. First and foremost, it's about mindset. So I think a lot of times we think of success as a final destination point. And what I often start with is success will always evolve in the same way that if you're always open to evolving, it's really how you define success in this moment, in the context in which you're living, with the resources that you have, the network that you have, like really starting to figure out that in the present moment versus trying to figure out like what's the success definition for my life, which can feel very overwhelming and can often keep us stuck in place. I think the first thing I often work on with people is just tell me about where you have good energy flow, right? There's this amazing exercise that I heard in an NPR interview years and years ago that was literally like take a stack of Post-it notes or a notebook, and for 2 weeks straight, just write down anytime you physically feel your body positively reacting to someone, something, a conversation, whatever it is, right? Like you get lost in researching a topic. You get so consumed in a conversation with someone and just feeling really good about that moment. Write it down. Who are you with? What are you doing? Why are you feeling energized in those moments? And across 2 to 3 weeks of doing that, you'll start to notice some patterns of where you are and who you're with, where you're starting to see a higher level of energy flow. And so for me, it's like start there, because those are the spaces that you want to put more into your life, right? You want to lean into those networks, lean into those activities more and more. And you want to start to give breath to it, meaning you want to start telling people around you, when I'm doing X, Y, or Z, I feel super excited. I'm super curious. I feel like I'm able to put the best of me forward in those moments. So that's the first. The second is to do exactly what you talked about. You know, values is something that's very personal. So strengthening your self-awareness. First, figure out your energy flow. Second, figure out your own sense of self-awareness and really work at it. Reflect on recently, what were the values that were in play when you made decisions related to your career, your life, your education? Why are those values important to you? And then dig below the surface. Where did they come from? How did they ground you? How did they guide you earlier on in your journey? And how are they currently guiding you today? A lot of times when we do this values exercise, people will say, like, I value X, Y, and Z. Immediately, my first question back to them is, in the last 30 days, give me some examples of how those values were in play. And that's kind of a test to say, like, if you can think of great examples, awesome, you're living your values. But if you can't, then there's this disconnect between what you think your values are and sort of what decisions or choices that you're making. And that's where you need to dig in a little bit more and start to bring it back into alignment. And then I would say lastly is just this whole spirit of like continuous feedback. So when I work with early career talent or people managers, it's like we sometimes have these blind spots. We sometimes prop ourselves up in some spaces, or we hold ourselves down. And the continuous feedback loops are ultimately what help us to notice patterns in the way we talk to ourselves, patterns in the way that we show up in the world and people experience us or engage with us. So the more feedback you're getting, the more data you're getting. And in that data, you can start to identify the patterns. And one last thing I would encourage is in the patterns, notice where people are finding your contributions the most valuable. So what you're trying to do here is between those three things is connect where you get good energy with where your actions show up and people find it to be incredibly valuable, and you're in alignment with your core values, your core strengths.
NarrowSpaces would like to extend our heartfelt gratitude to our sponsor, Battle and Thrive. Established with a mission to uplift and empower individuals, Battle and Thrive creates clothing designed to remind us that we're never alone. Their philosophy is simple yet profound. When you wear their clothing, you're inspired to thrive through any situation, no matter how challenging it may be. In the spirit of the NarrowSpaces show, which focuses on navigating the complexities of work and life, we encourage you to check out Battle and Thrive. They symbolize resilience and determination, helping you battle through life's struggles, big or small. To learn more about this empowering apparel and to join a community that thrives together, visit their website at battleandthrive.com and follow them on social media. Let's embrace the journey and thrive in every situation. I hope that everyone listening had that notebook out and they were taking notes on those 4 things, because This is so practical, and it really does transcend the work of early career because there's such a need for reinvention. There's such an openness to evolution today where people make multiple career transitions to truly navigate the narrow spaces of work and life. As our work and skills change and our life changes, we are constantly renegotiating those things. And I love that you've provided truly a formula to work through all of these changes in a way that defines success for today. I love that. Now, I don't know, you're in California, and so there's some beautiful coastland, there's some nice mountains, there's great hiking trails, you've got the man bun. I hope everyone can see it if you turn your head again. Like, I celebrate these things. So one of the things that comes, look there, you can see it. We can see the man bun. I just want people see. I just want to celebrate that, right? But there is adversity in the various narrow spaces of, I always think about the image of rock climbing. Like, we all want to get to the top. We all want to get to this gorgeous vista. But there are some really tight crevices. There are some really rocky paths. So let's talk about adversity. And each one of us faces challenges in our career. I know you've done that as well. I would love to invite you to share a specific moment that you've had to really navigate a particularly narrow space, and maybe share some of those lessons that you learned that could help others who were facing similar situations.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as I mentioned, I started my career starting a nonprofit, working in the nonprofit sector for a good 12 to 15 years before I went into corporate. And I had the opportunity to lead community affairs for a larger financial institution. And that was like a huge culture shift for me. Like, I had gone from, running the nonprofit where you're wearing like a million hats every day, running in all sorts of different directions, trying to like squeeze out as much impact from every dollar that you raise as possible, to, transitioning into corporate. We're literally, like, not even joking, like, I ended a huge volunteer project with over 500 volunteers in Pittsburgh at like 4 p.m, got in my car and drove to DC for my first day which the next morning. And, got to DC, went to the office, and like didn't have a computer for a good 2 weeks, didn't have any real direction for a little while in terms of trying to figure out like what was my day-to-day going to look like. And after having been so busy and transitioning into that, also the language, there were so many acronyms in the financial institution, so many different players in a company that's 30,000 people around the world. It's like, wow, this is very different, right? And so I think first and foremost is just sort of like the culture shock of that, and then challenging yourself to say, back to our point about definition of success, was this my definition of success, or was it what other people were saying is like, oh, you work so hard in nonprofit, like the measure of success is if you can get into corporate and then you've got it made. And it's like, am I chasing someone else's goal, or am I really doing what I want? Fast forward several years, we did a lot of really good work. I figured out how to sort of navigate in that world. But I got to a point where there was a lot of changes constantly happening that would sort of question the impact of our work, right? Like, we were working to put infrastructure in place. We were working hard to sustain programs and partnerships. And as with any company, right, there's ebbs and flows in terms of leadership, in terms of priorities, in terms of people's authentic understanding of your work. And I got to a point where there was so much negativity around me from the team, people just venting nonstop about all the changes. And I got caught up in that. So to me, that was one of the narrowest spaces that I have navigated in my career. And it was easy to be consumed by that because, do what everyone else is doing. They're venting, they're complaining. It feels good because we're all in this together. We're fighting the good fight. And then it was like, I started to realize that it was really impacting me outside of the workplace. It was impacting the way that I was showing up in my relationships, in my friendships, family. It was showing up in the way that I was just feeling good about what I was doing with my career, right? And I was always a builder, a creator. And all of a sudden, I felt like for months, I was just stagnant and really stuck. And, to me, how I navigated that was I worked on my mindset. And it really is not easy. And I want people to understand that, because I think sometimes we read all these things about growth mindset and we can shift and one day we just move in a different direction and suddenly everything is better. It doesn't typically happen like that. It's usually a lot of effort and intentionality day in and day out. The biggest change for me was really focusing in on two things. One was who I was giving energy to, right? That is within your control. Even if you are working in the toughest workplace setting with the craziest management relationship, you can really choose how much energy you're going to give to the people around you. And
yes,
if it,
Daniel.
yeah. And at the same time, like, this is the reality and the truth. Like, you are not stuck. If it is at a point where you're like, Dan, I cannot do that, like I literally have to engage with these people that are just sucking the energy out of me every day, then my simple response to you is, then you're in the wrong space, right? Like, find the space that lights you up, that gives you that good energy, that shows you all that you're capable of, the things inside of you that you even haven't discovered yet, right? The people that see that in you. And so that was like a big shift. And then the second was being really intentional with setting my own goals and setting, like, again, giving breath to those goals to the people around me. And so that's when I, you talked about your whiteboard, like that's where I like created the whole vision boarding piece. And I really stayed focused every year on not just professional goals that I was aiming to accomplish, but personal goals. And then how my actions and choices every day align to those goals. That was a huge differentiator, which ultimately inspired me to leave and move in the direction of launching my own company. And so, again, it did not happen overnight. There was lots of moments of self-doubt. There was lots of like start and stop, right? Like I jumped into it and then I was like, oh, never mind. That's too risky. I need to like go back to where it's safe. And that to me is just the human experience that we're all on. And if we acknowledge it, we talk about it, I think we normalize it and we show people that we're all in this together, essentially.
I love that. And, again, there's a nugget here that I want to really get into, because when we talk about the mindset and controlling what you can control, I feel like I encounter people so frequently who feel completely powerless in navigating the narrow space that their manager, their organization has created a situation where they feel powerless. And so almost every week, just because of the way that we talk about the narrow spaces of work and life, I meet someone reaches out to me and says, I am struggling. Let's talk. And over 30 minutes, we talk. I constantly am helping people recognize that you have control over whether or not you check your email at 9:00 at night. You have control over that. You can physically put your phone, if you're not a first responder, you can put your phone in a drawer in another room and take control. You have control over the messages you respond to. You have control over how you respond. And so I'm constantly teaching my clients predictable patterns of behavior for these peaceful vibe disruptors. Like I think we ought to have the best work of our life.
Yeah.
And so I'd love to talk with you about that. And this other piece that you said that I just love is that you were able to recognize when your work experience and your mindset in work and about work was negatively impacting your life and the relationships around you. And when similar to you, I spent close to 15 years in nonprofit. And when I went into industry, I was shocked because one of my core values being a nonprofit was stewardship. Every dollar had to be used 4 times. And so when I saw the spending and the things that the waste, it was so hard for me. And I had to really wrap my head around it. And then I saw the level of satisfaction that so many people were not experiencing.
Yep.
And it really made me step back and think, what am I doing? Do I believe that work is just to put money in a bank account, or do I believe that work has dignity and that when we work, we ought to feel really good about it? So tell me a little bit about your view of work.
Yeah. Holly, I have to tell you like a funny story. So when I shifted from nonprofit to corporate, the resource thing, I felt like, wow, like this is like in a totally different world. I'm going to have all the resources to do the type of change work that I want to be able to make. And I'll never forget, like we were building a volunteer program. And I remember it was like with the first month or two, I was like, all right, this is exciting. We have so many employees across the company. Like what are our resources? Like what budget do I have to work with? And it was like, oh, we don't have budget allocated for a volunteer program. And it was like so funny to me because like all of my friends and other people outside of it were like, oh, now that you've made it, you got the resources. It's totally different than you always having to fundraise and get people to support all the things that you want to do through in-kind or cash and all that. And I was like, the reality is like, I pretty much have to fight the same fight internally here to get the resources to do the good and help people to see that this change work is actually tied to business outcomes and not just a nice thing to have. So it's a totally different type of sales approach and influencing up, down, and across within an organization. And so I just wanted to say that because I think it's funny. Like we have these misperceptions sometimes. It's the whole like, grass is always greener on the other side until you're there and you start to realize the reality of the situation. So I would just add that. I think also the other thing I would just share, and going back, you made such a good point about in our work settings, right? We have to think about where do we have power? And, I worked with a lot of people at different stages of their career. And one of the things I've noticed is that sometimes people are so sucked into the swirl of negativity and of like, they've lost all confidence. They've got like 1% confidence left, right? And so it feels really hard to refocus in on like, where do I have power at work? Something that I found helpful that may be helpful for your listeners would be start in your own day-to-day lives and keep a journal around every day, and it could just be like a post-it note, like where did you make the decision? So for example, like where did you go to get coffee? Right? Like how did you like make your bed in the morning? Like was there an interesting technique that you use that you like, right? What did you make for breakfast, lunch, or dinner? Like really identify power points in your day where you were in control. And what I've learned in the process, even doing it myself, is it starts to shift. If you're in a space where you feel like you have no power, you start to realize day in and day out that there's these power points in your day-to-day living that you actually have power and you can make choices. And when you start to, again, take it a level deeper and start to think about why am I making those choices? What value am I gaining from these choices? And who's holding me accountable around me? It will shift and translate into your work setting. And I think that's where you start to realize, like, if I'm more open and honest with people around me about the types of projects that I want to do, I always say to the young talent we work with, what are the skills that you want to develop, the experiences that you want to have, the knowledge that you want to gain? Focus on reflecting on those things, and then tell as many people as you can those three things. Because the world around us, I say at least 75, the optimist in me says 90% of people, when they hear those things, they'll be like, oh, I heard this great webinar that will help you in understanding how AI is influencing X. Or, hey, this person, they're an amazing problem solver, and that seems to be an area that you want to develop further. You should connect with them. Let me make you an introduction, right? Like if we opened up and were honest more about what we wanted to experience or learn, I do think there's people around us in our world like that will help us get there. But so often we keep it suppressed, we keep it inside because we feel like, people are going to judge whatever we share, or they're going to see us as being quote unquote incompetent or not skilled or not good enough. And the reality is most people, including your C-suite leaders, are walking around this world with a phase of self-doubt playing out in their minds, questioning like, do I have what it takes? Right? Last thing I'll share is, one of the things that inspired me early on, I have her picture on my vision board, is when Oprah ended her series, her television show, she was asked in an interview, across all the interviews that you've done across 25 plus years of interviewing so many fascinating people, what were some trends that emerged across all of those interviews? And my favorite thing she said was, when the lights went off and the camera stopped rolling, the large majority of people would lean in and ask, was that okay? And it just showed me that like when you're talking to like, famous people, influencers, world leaders, people at all different stages of their lives, like, was that okay? Just shows that, again, this human experience, we're all moving around the world, seeking validation, looking for opportunities to feel valued, to feel like what we're contributing is actually meaningful and it's actually adding value to whatever teams or groups that we're a part of. And so I think sometimes zooming out and reflecting on that will help us navigate those narrow spaces a lot more effectively.
I think that's, great advice. And I want to go back to the building of relationships piece, because when humans do feel vulnerable, their need is to be seen and okay and belong and feel valued. And so, you've mentioned that you try to help those early career individuals say what they need and build those right relationships. And so, what are some of the other key strategies that you've found effective in helping others to build authentic connections?
Yeah. I think first and foremost, curiosity is such an important part of it. I think that if you're someone, I mean, this was me. Like, I remember all through college, like, people would say, like, oh, go to all these networking events and like go into these rooms and meet as many people as you can. And blah, blah. I'm like, that was terrifying for me. I was like, I don't know what to say. I don't know who to go up to. And I remember this mentor that I had early on. He knew how, like, I was a hard worker, oftentimes behind the scenes where people weren't like seeing what I was doing. And he would say to me, Dan, you're such like a goal-oriented person. Like, if you put your mind to something, like, you are going to achieve it. So think of networking, and I say this in our sessions, networking with a purpose. So it's not just networking for the sake of networking, but networking with a purpose means you walk into a room with a clearly defined goal that you want to achieve. And so he helped me frame, like, I remember the very first time I tried it, he's like, all right, we're going to research who's there. You're going to pick 2 or 3 people that you want to meet, and you're going to write out in your mind like 2 or 3 questions that you're curious about asking them. And then you give yourself permission to leave. And I did it. I like went to the 2 people, I asked my questions, and then I left. I ran out of that. And I remember like sitting in my car and I was like, okay, that wasn't that bad. Like, I got some interesting insights, right? Like,
Yeah.
so then I kept trying it. And it's like, again, the craft of testing and learning is something that I think will help you build better and better relationships, because beyond being curious, it means that you're really intentional in how you show up in that relationship. So when you ask great questions, you move beyond the surface. And when you move beyond the surface, you do 2 things. You discover common ground, and that's a foundation upon which you can build. And 2, that curiosity muscle will help you explore the differences. So we're like, oh, wow, like, I've never experienced that before. And it can be as simple as like, I've never been to that country. I haven't really traveled outside of the US a lot. So when I hear people are making these amazing trips, I'm like, oh my God, like, what was it like? How did you decide where to go, what to do? If it's about careers, it's like, well, it must have been a big pivot going from this to this. Like, what inspired that choice for you? Right? Like, those types of more meaningful questions will again start to explore the differences in our human experience. And that is what creates a stronger sense of connection. The last thing I'll mention is just trust. Trust is what I believe is the glue that sustains relationships. So you can build connections, but when you build trust, you sustain that relationship, right? And so trust is not just what you do, but it's how you do it. So it's not just me asking a series of interesting questions, but I'm doing it and I'm fully present in listening to the answer, and I'm fully present in probing for more, right? And following up in what they're saying. I'm fully present in connecting them to somebody related to a place that they might want to go, or a task that they want to achieve, or an experience they want to have. It's that intentionality, right? How you show up, that I think deepens the sense of trust. And when people trust you, they're more willing to support you. And that goes full circle back to what we talked about earlier. Then when you give breath, when they get curious with you, then they are more likely to support you in terms of the skills you want to develop, the experiences you want to have, all of that.
I think those are really great tips and points to consider. And I can see how that has been a really important part of your life. I can't remember how many years ago we met, but I have observed that in you. And most people who know me know that I'm like a relationship consumer. Once you're in, you don't get out. Like, once you are in my network, I make it a point to know that person and to make those recommendations and those connections. And one of the things that was really scary for me when I went out on my own and left industry was business development, because it just felt so icky. And
Yeah.
I totally erased business development from my vocabulary, and I only thought of it as relationship management.
Yep.
And I set a goal for myself, goal oriented also, of last year, I would do 10 outreaches a week that would translate into a phone call or a video that was just me loving on and being fully present to the person in front of me and connecting them with someone that made sense or something that made sense, but just being present in those relationships. And similar to you, most people are surprised to find that I don't really like networking events either. It's just not for me. So when I do go to them, I hone in on who's the person in the room that full presence is going to matter the most to. And I show up fully present, but we always end up with that stack of business cards because, even though it's 2025, people still carry paper. I do. I keep that stack of business cards on my desk until I've had a connection with each person.
Yeah.
And that's how I've wrapped my head around. So, whether you're whether you're a little weird like me or a little different kind of weird like you, however we are, there are people who light up when they walk in a room and they will consume everyone, but that's not the only way. And so I love that you presented an alternative. I've shared another way of doing it. And it seems like you just probably wrote the book on this, how to thrive in careers and life. And I'm kidding when I say it seems like, because you have a recent book. We got a pocket guide to thriving in our careers and lives. I love this, and we'll put out information about the book in the show notes that people can see. But is there a final key message for navigating the narrow spaces of work and life that you'd like to share that ties into what you shared in the book?
Yeah, I live by this motto. It's on my vision board. It's been there for a long, long time, and it's live life by design, not default. And this whole idea of we can sometimes get consumed by the routines of life. Sometimes those routines and the habits that we've developed, they serve us well, and sometimes they don't. In the same way that sometimes relationships in our lives serve us well, and sometimes they don't. And so life by design is very much about how are we being intentional with the way that we are personally showing up with what's in our control. And then how are we being intentional with the value that we're giving and providing to other people day in and day out. And so I think, for me, I love Adam Grant's work. I was a huge fan of his book, Give and Take. And I realized when I read that book, and I had some executive coaching when I was previous in my career, and I learned that I'm a giver. I'm a builder and a creator, number one, but I'm a giver. If I get something, whether it's knowledge or a connection, I'm always okay, how do I give this away? Right. And so for me, it was my first book was all about sharing my own story and my own journey, because people kept asking me, how did I find the courage to start a nonprofit at so young? How did I find the courage to walk into spaces that, most people would be like, I don't know how to navigate that. And I wanted to share those stories because I was certainly not, my story wasn't the answer. It was just an option. Right. And then the second book, We Got This, is all about literally 20 years of coaching and learning all the things that I noticed as trends across so many different conversations and training programs, mentorship initiatives. So We Got This is just packed full of tactical tools, resources that somebody can apply no matter where they are in their career. And it's really just a compilation of what I've learned and what I share. And I look forward to continuing learning and finding more ways to support people on the journey that they're in.
I love it. Daniel, what a great conversation. Can't wait to get people's hands on your book. And I appreciate that you journeyed in the narrow spaces with me today. It was a fun conversation, and I can't wait to see what happens next.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Holly. I appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us in the narrow spaces of work and life. What do? I'm on a mission to help people to have the best work of their lives. I help leaders do good. I help managers be good. And I help employees feel good. And when leaders are good, employees are engaged, energized, effective. And together, we get to live the life we deserve. Be sure to check out the show notes for more information on where to connect with our guests and sponsors and experience all things Narrow Spaces at narrowspaces.com, where you can gain access to this episode, subscriber extras, and more.